This is 2023's We Have a Ghost. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to a house in a quiet neighborhood, but that quickly changes when screams can be heard throughout the house. Suddenly, a woman and her kids run out of the house and jump into the car. They drive off and they take the mailbox out while they're at it. Then the front door closes and the light turns off on its own. A year later, Frank, Melanie, Fulton, and Kevin meet Barbara to see the house, and Barbara creeps in before welcoming them inside. When Frank realizes that Kevin didn't get out of the car, he goes back out to see what's going on. Kevin isn't too keen on seeing the house, but he reluctantly follows orders. Before he goes inside, he notices a shine coming from the highest window. Inside, Barbara's doing her best to sell the house, but she's running out of positive things to say. Finally, Melanie asks why the house is listed so low, but Barbara just says that it's a buyer's market. No, stop lying. Just admit that someone died there or they're moving in next to bad neighbors or something. Even for a fixer-upper, the house is listed cheap. That's not something you just come across anymore. I'd snatch this house up in a heartbeat. Kevin looks around the house and he finds his way upstairs. He gets worried when a ball rolls out to him, but suddenly, Fulton reveals himself. Neither of them think that their parents will actually move in there, but next thing you know, Frank's directing the moving truck. Poor mailbox isn't going to make it through the movie. It's already been knocked over twice and we're barely 5 minutes in. As Kevin helps unload boxes, he notices the neighbor girl, Joy, practicing her trombone, and she seems to be having the same problems with her dad. That night, Frank tries to rally the family, but Kevin isn't making it easy. The two of them really can't seem to connect, but Kevin stands strong in his own opinion. That night, Kevin's trying to sleep, but he hears someone stomping around in the attic. When you hear work boots stomping around in your attic at who knows what time of night, don't go searching for the source with your phone flashlight. That's all he's got. What's he gonna do if he finds someone? Blind them for 2 seconds? Eventually, Kevin runs into Ernest, who's trying to scare him off, but Kevin just laughs at him. He starts recording the ghost, and Ernest really doesn't know what to do next. He gives up and walks through the window, and Kevin seems to think that there might be more to the house than he originally thought. The next day at school, Kevin tries to research ghosts, but Joy pulls him aside to guard the bathroom while she spray paints her number from the bathroom stall. He points out that they're neighbors, and she can't believe that he moved into the house of death. The what? I'm a weirdo, so I'd be excited about that, but in general, this is where people should just up and leave. Joy invites him to hang out after school, but he comes up with an excuse since he seems uncomfortable. After school, Kevin goes to find Ernest, and he tells him not to bother trying to scare him. The two of them sit and connect over Kevin's bad memories, and he finds out that Ernest can't remember anything from his life or how he died. The two of them shake hands, and he finds out that Ernest can actually touch him if he wants. Suddenly, Fulton shows up and Ernest disappears. Fulton starts messing with Kevin, but Ernest throws him off of him. That night at dinner, Frank notices Kevin's mood, and he's wondering why he's in such a good mood. It's his little secret though. Not for long though. Fulton is the worst brother. He steals Kevin's phone and watches the video. Now Frank knows, and I'd imagine that he isn't staying quiet for long. No, Frank literally hides in the pantry to post the video on YouTube. He literally asks the kids not to tell Melanie so she doesn't freak out. But the rest of the world's okay? The next day, Dr. Leslie reads her book at a bookstore, and it's clear that she thinks that ghosts are real and dangerous. Back at the house, everyone online thinks Ernest is fake, and Frank and Fulton head upstairs to call upon Ernest. Kevin has to come upstairs to sing to Ernest, and he finally shows himself. Suddenly, Melanie comes upstairs to question about the ghost video, and she comes face to face with Ernest. The family heads downstairs, and Melanie says that they're leaving. She's speaking facts. She even admits that she doesn't want to sit around like the families in horror movies. This would be a short movie if she got her way. Frank talks her into staying, and he starts uploading more. Eventually, Dr. Leslie hears about Ernest on Dr. Phil, and she goes to talk to Agent Chipley to make him believe her. He doesn't, and he has her escorted out of the CIA headquarters. Later, Frank comes home to a crazy mob, and he has to push past the reporters to get inside. Apparently, one of the people got stuck in the chimney and there's a fake Jesus standing outside their window. Needless to say, Ernest doesn't seem so insane. Upstairs, Kevin tries to go through old boxes in the attic to see if he can jog Ernest's memory, but nothing helps. Later, Ernest goes to the library to go through property records, and Joy pops up to help him find out everything about Ernest. He did live in the house in 1965, but there's no record of a death certificate. Meanwhile, Frank is getting the house ready for the TV medium, Judy Romano. Judy wants Frank to make sure Ernest is ready to go, and he promises her that he'll be ready. Upstairs, Kevin's showing Ernest what kind of vibe he has to show during the interview, and Frank tells Kevin to make sure he shows up. Kevin agrees to talk to Ernest, but he doesn't say what kind of talk it'll be. When Judy and Frank start the interview, Ernest doesn't show at first, but when Judy's about ready to give up, he goes full poltergeist. Ernest is terrifying here. Anytime they have somebody contort their body like he does, it literally freaks me out. Actually, I kind of wish horror movies would actually use some of these effects. They might actually be more convincing. The new footage is a hit, but it hits people way differently than him being a friendly ghost. When Kevin goes to school, Joy tells him that she found out some more about possible links to Ernest, and they agree to go to a nearby bar later with Ernest to see if there are any triggers there. That afternoon at the house, Dr. Leslie barges in to question the family while Kevin introduces Ernest to Joy upstairs. Kevin asks Ernest if he's ever actually tried to leave the house, and he tries to point out that his only chance of piecing his memory together might be outside the house. They take him to the back door to help him test the theory, and Ernest takes his first steps outside in decades. Meanwhile, Dr. Leslie explains to Frank and Melanie that she's there to apprehend a ghost, and she really thinks that they're going to let her see Ernest. All she had to do was wait outside with fake Jesus, and she would have been sneaking him out the back. Ernest runs all around town to escape everyone, but Kevin waits until they're free before asking if he can go invisible. Why didn't he do that when he left the house? When they get to the bar, the owner takes a look at the picture and finds another picture of him on the wall with another man. As they leave the bar, they walk through a park, and Ernest starts to have a connection to his past. He remembers his daughter as he walks over to another girl and he reaches out for her. Suddenly, she screams out in terror, and everyone starts recording this. And there's Dr. Leslie's warrant. Ernest the not-so-friendly ghost. On top of that, the family's torn between Kevin wanting to help Ernest cross over and Frank, who refuses to let Ernest go. Meanwhile, Dr. Leslie is ready to go to war with Ernest, and she gets some weaponry. These guns literally look like something out of Men in Black. Now Green Laser SWAT is busting the doors down. They didn't even present a warrant, it's a ghost. What danger do they think everyone's in? Kevin and Ernest aren't there though. They took Fulton's car and ran off with Joy. Then Agent Chipley shows up, and he points out to Frank that he's in charge here now. Kevin and Joy are going over a game plan for how they're going to get to Tulsa to find the man from Ernest's picture, and Ernest has him watch the sunrise with him. When they stop at a gas station, Kevin watches the news on the TV, and he watches his father tell the world that Ernest abducted Kevin and Joy. Outside, a cop notices Joy and Ernest in the car, and they try to take them into custody. Well, if they weren't fugitives before, they definitely are now after Ernest takes a cop's gun and Joy kicks the other in the balls. I'd say that pretty much seals the deal. To top it off, Kevin hits one of them with the car as they try to speed away. Even if they help Ernest, they're all going to jail now. End of the line. I also gotta say that the high-speed chase in this movie is better than some of the ones in the last couple Fast and Furious movies. Not bad. They manage to get away, and back at the house, the family is basically being held hostage. Melanie sneaks off to the bathroom, but on the way she snatches her phone as Kevin calls. She tells him to do whatever he thinks is right, but Dr. Leslie pops up and snatches the phone. Melanie refuses to tell her anything, but she won't have to since the bartender shows up to share info on the picture. That night, Ernest snatches a hotel room key, and they all crash in one of the nastiest hotel rooms ever. Kevin and Joy bond over talking about their not-so-perfect dads, and he thanks her for helping them. As things get a little more personal, Ernest tries to set the mood with the radio, and he even gives them a ghostly pep talk in the bathroom. They don't sleep together. I mean, well, they do, but they don't get it on or anything. Now to add to Ernest's list of crimes, he helps them get some new wheels. The list of crimes is just getting longer and longer. They eventually get to the friend's house, and Kevin heads up to the front door. A man named Ernest answers the door, and he invites him inside. Ernest tells him about how he lost his bowling shirt years ago, and he points out that he saw it for the first time when he saw clips of Ernest on the news. It turns out that Ernest is actually Randy, his brother-in-law. Randy's wife died in childbirth, and Randy left his daughter June with Ernest and his wife. Ernest thinks that Randy drank himself to death after leaving his daughter with them, and Randy can't stand to hear the truth. Suddenly, Joy beeps the horn, and Kevin sees that Dr. Leslie and her team have found them. Real quick, I know that his real name is Randy, but we know him as Ernest, and so does Kevin. I'm gonna go back to calling him Ernest. Ernest gets caught. Those Men in Black guns actually pack a little punch that hurts Ernest. These definitely aren't Ghostbuster equipment. Dr. Leslie takes everyone in for questioning, and she releases Joy and Kevin to their parents. Ernest, on the other hand, she keeps in a holding cell made for ghosts, and she shares an intimate moment with him before Agent Chipley brings in more board members from other agencies. Dr. Leslie asks Chipley what he wants to do with Ernest, and he tells her that he'll do whatever he wants, since Ernest is already dead. Back at the house, Joy comes over to check on Kevin, and she finds that Kevin is not doing well at all. He's holding everything in, but it's clear that he's not doing well. That night, Kevin looks at the stained glass window in the attic, and Frank comes upstairs to talk with him. Frank ends up telling him a story about the night he was born, and he starts to admit that he's been less of the dad that he wanted to be the older Kevin gets. Isn't that the truth? He mentions that it's harder to hide the parts you don't like when your kids get older, and that makes perfect sense. This is that make or break time, and I'd say he's trying to fix things in the right way. He tells Kevin that he definitely tried to do the right thing for Ernest, and he tells him that he admires him for being a better man. Outside, someone in a rain jacket drinks from a bottle in the rain. Meanwhile, Ernest is having trouble being a prisoner, but he remembers something when he sees an eagle pin on the soldier. It turns out that the real Ernest and his wife tricked him into bringing his daughter over, and the real Ernest killed him so they could have a daughter. When Ernest comes back to the present, he finds that he has an unexpected ally in Dr. Leslie who helps him break out. Luckily, Ernest even manages to hitch a ride in a lift, and the driver takes him back home. Back at the house, Kevin starts to hear thudding in the house throughout the night, and he goes to see if it's Ernest. The back door's open, and after Kevin closes the door, he finds the real Ernest drinking at the table. When real Ernest breaks a glass, it wakes up the family, and what does Frank grab? A good old Louisville Slugger, the go-to choice for home defense. I think Fulton has a workout bar. Not a bad choice, but not as easy to swing. They head downstairs to find real Ernest holding Kevin hostage, and they lower their weapons when real Ernest admits that it was his wife's idea to take June. Kevin manages to break free, and Frank wrestles with real Ernest. Real Ernest has to be in his 70s or 80s, and he beats Frank down with a cast iron skillet, pushes Fulton down the basement stairs, and he takes the main stairs like a soccer player in high school. What's he on? He chases Kevin to the attic, and he eventually finds the box with June's stuffed rabbit. He laughs at old memories, and Kevin tries to sneak up on him. He manages to smack the gun out of his hand, but real Ernest overpowers him too. Suddenly, our Ernest arrives, and he protects Kevin. Ernest knocks him out after he admits to killing him, and Ernest checks on Kevin. When Frank comes upstairs, he finds Ernest, but he also sees the real Ernest getting ready to shoot. He charges him right out of the window, and the police arrive. All of them are taken in for questioning, but they're only worried about where our Ernest went to. Kevin tells Chipley that he doesn't know where he disappeared to, and he thinks that it might be because he found the guy who killed him. Chipley doesn't believe him though. Then we see that the family actually brings June to see her real father, our Ernest. At first, she's at a loss for words, but after memories flood back into their minds, she says hello to her dad. Later, Ernest and Kevin sit by the lake, and they skip stones as the sun sets. Suddenly, Ernest starts to fade away, and they know that it's time. This feels like an extended emotional Supernatural episode, although I'm sure any other Supernatural fan probably had an aneurysm when the iron poker didn't hurt Ernest. I'm right there with you, don't worry. Kevin says goodbye to Ernest, and he joins Frank and June as they watch him fade away. Back in the interrogation room, Kevin just smiles at Chipley. Later, the family packs up the house, and Kevin says goodbye to Joy in the attic. He gets his first kiss, and he asks her if she thinks Ernest can still see them from wherever he is. He takes one last look at the attic he found Ernest in, and the light flickers. Then, the credits roll. If anyone's looking for a good old feel-good comedy action-ish movie, this is definitely a good one. It's crazy to see David Harbour playing so many roles recently. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.